I mean, I started playing role playing games very young, and I think that might be the case for most people. They pick it up when they're young. I mean, I feel like that's when you're at your most like un unbridled creativity. Like
You
no
also have
one's
the most
beating your
time.
creativity out of it. Yeah, you have the most time in your life to dedicate to it. So I for one picked it up very early. I was like I think 7 or 8 years old when my older brother, introduced me to role playing games. I had already played a lot of video game role playing games and had like heard about it from my brother who would talk about it constantly. It was like main hobby. So I would get like secondhand information about how to role play, how he was role playing, what he was learning, and then I think he ran. I want to say it was Werewolf the Apocalypse for a few of his friends, and I got to play in it, and that was kind of my big first introduction to role playing, which was a really interesting decision. And then after that, it was D&D, and I played D&D with him. And then from there, I didn't get to role play very much because I was still very young, and most of his friends and him were much older than me. And then he brought me to a Vampire the Masquerade LARP event, and I got to play Vampire the Masquerade, and I was really excited to do that because I'd been hearing about it for so long. And he kept bringing me to those events until they banned people who were my age from playing that game because it was way too adult. And I still kept going to the events, but I just couldn't play during the events, so I had to sit out and do cat's eye. And he asked a friend of his if he could invite me to their home L5R game because I was his cool little brother and he wanted to have a game that I could actually role play in. And Steve Brula said yes, and I got to go and play L5R for the first time.
Just,
And that was like my first real big test of being like a mature role player. And I had a lot of
just
fun.
so you know, Cat's Eye is was just the little cafe that we set up for the Vampire LARP.
Yeah,
I
that's true.
I met Tarek at at the Vampire LARP.
Yeah, and I sold people food and drinks
That's
as
right.
a young kid. Yeah,
Sasha,
very.
would you like to give your story? Do you got a good story too about this, or
No.
You don't have a good story. You
No,
don't want to
it's
share.
boring. I don't have like any interesting
I think it's
stories.
interesting.
The only interesting story, I guess you could say, which I can't believe I'm about to admit, is that I've been gaming for like 5 years now, a little more than five. Got into it kind of late compared to a lot of people, I guess. It was 16 was when I really got into like D&D was my first tabletop RPG. Um I think it is for most people, but I was in I was in high school and I was doing what they call like a concurrent enrollment program where you do high school and you do college at the same time. And the goal is to graduate high school with your associate's degree. And usually it's paid for by the state, basically. So you get an associate's degree, it's mostly free. Well, it is in theory. Anyway, that's when I got into it. And I was very used to hanging around people that were way, way older than me, going in person to college all the time, barely spending any time with people my actual age. Um, so I got into a big like D&D community that was very adult. And I totally lied to everybody and gaslit them about my age for like years, so that I could hang out with a bunch of people who are way older than me and play D&D. So that's how I got like into, these sorts of things.
uh,
Probably not the best. I wouldn't follow my example.
you were
Not a good
just
role model.
you were just trying to be like the people who enlisted in World War II.
Yeah.
You're an American hero.
Or trying to be a better version of what I did.
Lying
I
about
wanted to
your
play
age
I
to
wanted to play
get
Vampire the
in.
Masquerade, but I couldn't lie about my age because I was 12 and everybody would be like,
It was pretty obvious if you're
you're
12.
not able to do
Yeah.
this."
For me, I started. I got Fantasy Flight books, Choose Your Own Adventure books, when I was 8 that told me what D&D was. I went out and got the red box. Um, and I would play with like my dad or anybody I could rope into playing, and it was very sporadic. And as time went by, like I was in middle school, and from elementary, I had a few friends, and then I was pretty much abandoned by all of my friends when I went into middle school, and I was alone, and I was a lonely person who was considered a big nerd in a time when nerds were bullied. And I'm not like saying like how bullying is done online or like, they call you names and stuff. They do that. But they also like physically bully you. Like they push you into lockers, throw you into bathroom stalls. They put tacks on my chair, glue on my chair. It was kind of a nightmare going to school.
Yeah, I went through that.
Uh-huh. Um and it was a really dark time in my life. And uh finally I found a group of D&D players that needed me there every week. It was like a place of like safety that I could go, but also a place where I was accepted, and it felt so great. I think it might have saved my life. Dungeons and Dragons. Because in Dungeons and Dragons, like if you play sports in school, you'd be, well, why don't you just go to sports in school? It's like they don't need you. They'll find somebody else better than you. You can be an outcast at any club or anything in school. But at a Dungeons and Dragons table, especially back then when there weren't a lot of people into that kind of hobby, like they needed the healer, they needed the spellcaster, they needed their tank. If you weren't there, that might be a total party wipe, right? On one hand, I was used to fill a role. On the other hand, like there were people there that really wanted me there, and that's where I met Howard. There were still a couple people in that gaming group who tried to bully me, and Howard stood up for me.
Yeah.
So even in role playing games, there were people who were trying to bully. There was one guy who tried to kill every single one of my characters,